I'm Kathy Clary, and I am part of the Goldtimers committee. We are all very excited to be here at the ISU Alumni Center. We've been working towards this for probably over a year. So we're happy to be here. We're glad you came for our first meeting. And at the end, I'm going to ask you for some feedback, and I'll point out some people who you can give that to, okay? I'd like to start by pointing out our SHIP counselors. They're in the back of the room. For everyone who is 65 or soon to be 65, the SHIP counselors are senior health insurance program people. I call them the Medicare folks because they have been trained to answer questions and help you learn about Medicare so that you can make the right decisions for yourself. I would encourage everyone to look at what their insurance plans are for the coming year. It's always good to evaluate. October 15th is the start of the enrollment period. And I'm going to say, was there anything I missed? Okay. Next, we are fortunate to have two sponsors, Busey Bank as well as Direct Travel. And this is the travel summary that Direct Travel has put together for us. There are a couple of trips that I want to highlight today. First, in the spring is a Panama Canal cruise. Bill Flick will be going on that. And the week of the 22nd of September, they're going to start advertising it in the Pantograph. So if this trip is something that is of interest to you, you probably want to reach out to Kimberly to let her know that you're considering the trip, because I expect that once the Pantograph gets it, it will go fast. The other thing I want to share is Alaska. Alaska is always a popular trip. I feel like I lost sound. Anyway, on Wednesday, September 18th, there's an informational meeting about one of the Alaska trips, which is land and cruise. It's at 6 p.m. at Bloomington Country Club. Everyone's invited.
It's my pleasure to introduce Abby, although it sounds like from people who have heard her speak, she really doesn't need any introduction. She's very entertaining, I guess. So we shall see. Abby has had kind of a full circle in her career. She started as a freshman in high school at the barn as a bus person, then a waitress, then an actress. She graduated from Eureka High School. She's a fellow Illinois Wesleyan alum. And then she got her master's degree from the Illinois School of Psychology. And so in that time, she has been a counselor and done a lot of psychology type activities. But then in 2018, she decided to take a leap and purchase the barn, got a small business loan, got it reopened, went from the barn 2 to the barn 3. And I think things have been going great ever since, from what it sounds like, with a lot of hard work. Yeah, so she has her team here to help her out today, and you might get a little surprise within her presentation. I was going to tell you the last thing on her lengthy bio is that she's an ordained reverend. So if anybody here wants to get married today or renew their vows, she might be able to help you out.
Do it.
So please help me welcome Abby Reel.
Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate it. And welcome to all of you. I'm so excited to be with you today. I wasn't expecting her to explain my my religious background as well. So if anybody does need some additional pastoral support, let me know, and I can hook you up with that today too. I'm going to get started with just a little video here. So, and again, I do know this is the first time in this new space. So I want to first of all give a big round of applause to the Busey gentlemen who got everything hooked up, and the Alumni Center. They've been lovely to work with, and I used to work at Illinois State University, and right as this building was kind of coming to be, and so I only got to kind of hang out here a few times. So to be back here and being able to present in such a lovely space is sort of also full circle for me in many ways. So this means a lot. So bear with us. Hopefully all of the technology things will go exactly how they're planned, but if they don't, we'll just talk amongst ourselves while we figure it out, okay? So here we go. There's only one phrase uttered in that entire video. What have I gotten us into? Right? And today I'm going to begin my talk with the wise words of a very talented woman who I had the privilege of playing the role of in last year's Christmas show on the barn stage, Julia Child. A wise quote, and the quote that I've built my entire presentation around today. And I'm not going to do my Julia Child impersonation because I'll ruin it on the spot. A party without a cake is really just a meeting, right? And we don't do meetings at the barn. We do parties. So I brought most of my team with me today to kick us off in true barn style. We don't do any performance at the barn until we have celebrated the audience that is sitting with us. So who has a birthday today? Anybody? Anybody's birthday today? Anybody birthday this week? Any birthday this week? We got 3 birthdays this week. Okay. All right. You get your cake and you get your cake and you get your cake. All right. Who has an anniversary this week? Who got married this week? Yeah, we got an anniversary back there. Let's go. We got an anniversary. We got to get rid of these cakes. Come on. We got to move. All right. Any other anniversaries? No other anniversaries? Last week? We'll take last weekend. That works. Last week. Here we go. Oh, and another one. There we go. All right, what else? What other celebrations do we have? It's National Hispanic Month. Anybody speak Spanish? Kathleen speaks Spanish. Let's give, and you speak Spanish. All right, way to go. All right, it's National Pain Awareness Month. Is anyone in pain? Okay, all right, cakes, over there. All right, it's National Classical Music Awareness Month. Who's my pianist in the room? Pianist, we got a pianist right there. There's another one. Okay, what else? Let's see here. There's a pianist. Yeah, and you've got a poor little foot. You need one for pain and pianist. There you go. You got a foot brace going on. Okay, let's see. What else? What can we celebrate? Who's leaving on vacation today? Leanne, let's give Leanne a cake. Leanne needs a cake. Okay. How about this? Who's been retired a week? A week. Oh, coming up a week, not even a week. How many days? October 1st. She retired October 1st and she's at this meeting, folks. Let's hear it for you. Oh, we got one back there. How many days? A week? Yeah. You're still up. She said, mine's still up for pain. Anyway, okay, who's been retired a month? How many cakes we got left? Who's been retired for a year-ish? A year, we got a year in the back, a year over here, a couple more. Okay, now we're gonna start moving backwards. Who's been retired 25 years? Oh, right here. 25 years. Can anybody in the room beat 25 years? No? Oh, she was waving. I'm like, I thought you, yeah. I was like, I thought you still worked. You're a shift person. 98. There you go. I don't mental math, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. We got a cake. All right. All right. How about this? Let's do, and we brought some other goodies just in case. We'll leave some cakes up here for those of you who still want a cake. All right. So let's try this. How many, I want to know who my wisest person in the room is. Oldest and wisest. Well, yeah. Who thinks they're the oldest individual in the room today? Do I have any 90-year-olds in the room? Do I have any 90-year-olds? 80-year-olds? In between 80 and 90, 85? 89. Can anybody be 89? No? 89? 89. You get a gift card for being 89. How about that? So do you. Got to come hang out with us. Good to see you. Now, who's been, let's try this one. What was the other one I said I was going to do? Are there any married couples in the room that have been married 50 years, anniversaries? 50 years? Are you kidding me? Okay. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You get beer cheese. Yeah, give them beer cheese. They need beer cheese. They don't need a cake. They've been married a long time. They need beer cheese. They need beer cheese. It's like crack on a cracker. That's what you need for being married that long. Okay. All right. How many? What's my longest? Where's my 51 years? Keep your hand up. 52 years? 53 years? 54 years? 55 years? 56 years? 57? 58? Just tell me. 60? 64 years back here? 62. Sit here. Gift card for my 64 years. Come and see us and celebrate with us. All right. Okay. Well, we've got cakes left over. So if you want a cake, it'll be here after I'm done talking to you. Okay. All right. Don't feel bad. So again, let's give it up for my team. Aren't they fabulous? Walking around with the forks. Do you want to have your cake and eat it too? We brought forks just in case you didn't want to wait. You know, we gotta make sure we accommodate for that. Oh, I tell you, now I set down my thing. Where did I set it? Oh, right behind me. That's like my clipboard. I can't keep it with me. All right. Well, I tell you what, folks, we humans have a lot to celebrate. From birthdays to anniversaries, promotions, retirements, weddings. It's a clip from one of our most recent weddings at the barn. This was a Serbian couple. They're of Serbian descent, and they all wanted to wave their napkins to celebrate, right? Human beings love to celebrate. Now, before I go any further, I have a disclaimer for you. And I know Leanne introduced me briefly. I know I was asked here today to talk about a barn, but I got to be honest with you. Before there was a barn in my life, I only had eyes for education. You can take the girl out of the university, but you can't take the university out of the girl, all right? So my career actually started in higher education. This is me on my very last day of having an actual boss. So in some ways, this is my picture of retirement, right? Except somehow I cashed out my SIRS retirement and then gave it to a barn building. And we'll get into all that later. But anyway, how many Wesleyan alums do I have in the room? Do I have any Titans? All right. Do you know this rock? This is the rock that sits on McPherson Beach, right kind of between the music hall presser and the theater building. And tradition is that when you graduate or you have a momentous occasion at Illinois Wesleyan, you're supposed to sneak out in the dead of night and spray paint the rock. Well, I was a very good girl and never felt comfortable doing that. And so it wasn't until my very last day of work that right in the wide open air, I spray painted the rock to commemorate my time at Illinois Wesleyan. So I first started my career at Illinois Wesleyan in admissions. I literally walked across the stage, got my diploma, and showed up to work the very next day. And I worked there for 5 years in admissions. And then I went on and did kind of the Central Illinois education circuit. I worked at Illinois State University. I worked at ICC. I worked at Eureka College. I worked at Methodist College. I had a very healthy career in higher ed. I landed back at what was, in my mind, my dream job. I was the Associate Director of Career Development at Illinois Wesleyan University, and that was where my life turned upside down. I was sitting next to students. My job was to help students figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. And I was specifically in charge of the entrepreneurship students. So I sat every day and would encourage them and hear their vision and their dreams, and I would talk about how they could make it happen. And then when the barn opportunity sort of was presented to me, it was one of those life-changing moments where I thought, you know what? If I don't try, I will never forgive myself. I sit here and equip students to do this every single day. I know I have a soft place to land back in higher ed if it doesn't go well, right? But I will never forgive myself if I don't try. So being an educator turned entrepreneur just might explain why my higher education brain couldn't resist a chance to dig deeper into the science of humankind's need for celebration. And truth be told, and my team can testify to this, I've been fixated on the topic for the past few years, especially as I looked ahead on the barn's calendar. 2025 marks the barn's 50th anniversary of an old abandoned cattle barn becoming the barn that we all know and love so well. 5 decades of dinner theater. It's an incredible milestone. Who came up with the crazy idea of dinner theater to begin with? Well, we have Broadway to blame for it, actually. The great Chauncey Conklin, the original founder of the barn, also former Illinois Wesleyan theater and dance professor. Chauncey Conklin was in New York City auditioning for a Broadway show when he heard actors talking about this new modern concept that they were doing out in New York. It was called dinner theater. And the actors would wait on the tables and the guests would have dinner before the show. And it was this lovely, cool, unique experience. And no one in Illinois was doing it yet. And so Chauncey came back from that audition on fire. And he is who made dinner theater happen in Illinois. His first production was in the Illinois House downtown. Did any of you go to the Illinois House? Yes, okay. So the Illinois House was where Chauncey first put on his first production, but he would argue with the owners of the Illinois House for months and months about giving him more time in the space. They'd only give him a weekend here and there, and Chauncey wanted to run a show for multiple weeks, if not months. He didn't want just one weekend. He wanted to do it more regularly. So he sought out on the hunt to find a permanent home for dinner theater. He went all over Central Illinois. There's many communities probably represented in this room today that Chauncey and Mary visited trying to set up shop. And in the end, they were like the 3 little bears. This was too big, this was too small. But he found the old abandoned cattle barn on Timberline Road in Goodfield, and it fit just right. But did it really fit just right? You folks all retired from the field of risk analysis, right? Okay, so let's just take one little moment here to step back and analyze this project. Hey, why don't we take the entertainment business and the restaurant business, 2 of the industries with the highest rate of failure, and we're going to put them together in an old barn that's practically falling down, and we're going to put that barn in the middle of a dry town in a community that, by and large, doesn't really attend live music or believe in theater unless it's a church sing or a kid's Christmas program. And let's make the magic happen, right? Right? So did it really fit just right? But wait, It gets better, okay? And then after the first barn goes bankrupt, let's do it again. Right? How many of you were under the impression that the first barn burned down? Raise your hand if you thought the first barn burned down. Okay, this is a huge myth. I'm working really hard to set it straight. If you are from Metamora on, you think the barn burned down. I don't know how that rumor got started, but that is the misconception. We think maybe Mary and Chauncey planted that seed so that people would think when they reopened that it wasn't bankruptcy, that it just burned down and then they started over again. But no, the first barn went bankrupt. And then to make matters even more exciting, we decided to open it again under a new name, and we're going to call it the Barn to Dinner Theater. And then get your risk brains back on. After it gets hit by a tornado, let's build it one more time, because you know what? Life is not complete without a barn. So here we go, gang. There's so many emotions this picture brings up in me, like of what Mary and I were feeling that day. This is us in our red high heels raising the first wall of the barn. Barn raisers through and through. This is one of my favorite pictures of the original build. And I've been told there is a dollar bill right in that peak right there. I'll never get to it, but there's a dollar bill up there. My contractor told me that after the fact. So when I explain it that way, I think I'm the one that needs the cake, right? Stressed spelled backwards spells desserts. Okay, that's what's really going on here. So clearly, celebration has power. Power enough to get crazy humans, specifically this human, to do crazy things to ensure 50 more years of a barn in the cornfields of Central Illinois. So let me give you a quick decade by decade. I'll do right by you and I'll give you the barn story as well. We'll do a quick decade by decade rundown of how this new old barn has become the symbol of so much celebrating. So we're going to start in the 70s quick. Now this picture was obviously not from the 70s, but Mary and Chauncey needed a permanent home for their traveling dinner theater. And again, they started in the Illinois house and they went all over. On September 1st, Labor Day, 1975, they toured what they thought was the campground's rec hall. That's where they went. The rec hall sits right next, or used to. It's that big red machine shed that kind of sits right behind the barn. That's what they toured. And they went in and first question, how much time can we get? And they said, well, you're not going to get any time here. We're busy all the time. But what about that old Angus cattle barn that's sitting there? It's vacant. What do you think? And the rest is history, folks. So Labor Day 1975, they took ownership of the abandoned cattle barn and they opened on Halloween night, 1975, 2 months. The stories go, there were no partitions between the bathroom stalls the night they opened. You could just sit there and tinkle next to your neighbor. Very intimate. All the dishes, they ran out of hot water, so they couldn't wash any of the dishes. They sat in garbage cans overnight because they completely used all their hot water up. The food was bussed in out of town. There wasn't a kitchen there, so everything was brought in and catered. And Chauncey literally finished building the last table that guests sat at. From what all the people have told me, literally minutes before people walked in the door, Chauncey was finishing building the very last table. That is how it got started. The first production on the barn stage was George M. Now, the original barn had been built by Forrest Lemons back in 1941. And the interesting thing about Forrest Lemons is that I feel some close connection to him in spirit, in a way. He used to host huge Angus cattle field days on the property with live music and rodeos. The entire grounds were developed for the purpose of bringing people together. He was quite the visionary, and he reminds me a lot, when I read about him, he reminds me a lot of my dad. And I grew up, my dad is less real. ran the Real Livestock Center. I grew up on an Angus cattle farm. So it's just kind of funny, the connections that now here I am in an old Angus cattle barn doing what I love. The other interesting thing is that in 1929, the village of Goodfield had voted against bringing electricity to town. But Forrest, as a young man, I know, right? Forrest, they like to vote a lot. Forrest had traveled as a young boy taking care of livestock. That was sort of his job early on. So he had got to travel the world and see how electricity worked on farms and how awesome it was. And so he decided to call President Roosevelt himself. He spoke to him, promised him he would have 2,000 farmers at a meeting if the president would just send a representative to Goodfield. And Forrest made it happen. And just like that, they had electricity in Goodfield. They were one of the first rural communities in Illinois to have electricity. And just a few years later, the Rural Electrification Act was passed as part of FDR's New Deal. And so it's kind of an interesting nugget that this property has always been a part of progress for our community. And we like to laugh, first electricity, then prohibition, what's next? So the 80s so this is sort of a picture that was painted for Chauncey of what the original barn when he first opened it looked like. The 80s were a very interesting time for the barn. They really grew. They became a very popular destination. They were growing in leaps and bounds. They were running multiple shows a weekend. Love Rides the Rails became a main stage show. It would run Wednesday nights, sometimes Thursday nights, multiple times. Did any of you come out and enjoy Love Rides the Rails? Okay, I love it. Yes, great. Caterpillar and State Farm specifically, your organizations were growing simultaneously, and that really did feed and support the growth of that new barn. Recently, I've been interviewing some longtime customers, and a lot of them were new cat transplants coming to the area, engineers, bright, precocious folks being moved to, in their minds, the middle of nowhere. And the barn gave them a sense of community. They'd all come out in groups. They'd watch the evening performance of Love Rides the Rails, and then they'd go have coffee the next morning in their team, and they'd all argue about how they wanted to sway it so it would end differently the next time they came back, because it's an audience participation kind of show. So then they'd come back next week ready to thwart the actors and get them off track and figure out how they could make it happen. So there was a lot of community building going on, and I think it also directly represented how the community around us was growing as well. The other thing that happened in the 80s is as the original barn actors who were first part of the growth happened, the fascinating thing is Mary and Chauncey was in his, help me Kathleen, 40s maybe when I think he started it. I think around the 40s, in his 40s. But most of the folks who were directly involved were, in my opinion, when I look at them, babies. They were young college students that Chauncey had the blessing of getting to know and working with, and they were devoted to the cause. So there was this big group of young people that he sort of rallied. Mary Simon was a freshman at ISU. When Chauncey met her, he pulled her right out of college. She didn't finish anything after that because the barn was her life. So they credit her as being an alum, but she got 1 year in, and then Chauncey discovered her. And so there was a lot of just young, eager talent that were so excited to get this project off the ground. But as the barn kept going, they started partnering up and marrying and having children and so on and so forth. And the obvious reaction to that was, we should have a children's show. We need to add a children's component to what we did. And so Brementown Musicians was the very first children's show that they did. That picture is here. And then the children's component became a big part of the history of the barn. I was so blessed. This summer was the first summer we were able to bring back the children's production. So we launched our first ever children's show at the new barn this summer. It was a wonderful experience. We had so much fun. And that's been a meaningful thing to return to. Now in the 90s, okay, just a few months shy of their 20th anniversary, this is when the barn went bankrupt. So Mary and Chauncey had to leave everything behind. The actual date was in April 1995. A series of unfortunate events took place around that time. First of all, Mary would tell me several cat plants closed around that time, and it did impact the economy, not just the barn, but lots of other businesses were impacted by it. Chauncey's ambitious ways maybe got the best of him just a little bit. During the 80s, he had purchased the brick house property, and that's shown here. That is, if you can see the old barn up there, the brick house is right here in front of it. He purchased the brick house property and started renovating it. It worked fast and furious and opened that as I almost called it an Airbnb, a bed and breakfast. So he was ahead of his time. This was before Airbnbs, but that's what Chauncey wanted the facility to be. So he overextended them a bit on that project. And finally, the story that has been told to me is that the buffet line stigma caught up with them. So there was a large bus group that had come through the barn. They had done multiple stops during their trip. That day, they saw the show in the morning, but then they went and they had dinner and they did a couple other things. And it ended up that entire bus group got food poisoning. No one else at the barn, that show, got food poisoning, but that bus group reported it and the newspapers got a hold of it. And from what I was told, there was also a big part of they were fighting a stigma that happened from this bad press that took off. So the buffet line kind of got to them in that situation. So the barn went bankrupt and it was abandoned for a whole year while Mary and Chauncey traveled the country looking for other spots to open a dinner theater. They knew their idea could work. And they learned a lot in the first 20 years of business. They wanted to keep it alive. Now, the bank, on the other hand, they had other ideas, right? The brick house sold immediately to a local family, but the old barn, it sat and sat and sat. They had no idea what to do with a barn that had been renovated into a theater and was full of costumes and props. And so after a year, Mary and Chauncey came back with an idea. Mary would buy back the barn herself. So Mary and Chauncey never married. So the bankruptcy was in Chauncey's name, not Mary Simon's. So a year later, they came back with a plan. They would repurchase the barn from the bank, and they would open it on April 20th, 1994 as the Barn 2 Dinner Theater. And that's where I had the privilege of joining the team. So in 1995, I started working there as a freshman, like Leanne shared. And then I became a waiter. And then Mary cast me in my first show in the fall of 2000, much to the thanks of a woman who is sitting in the audience with me today, Kathleen Irving. She was my high school musical director, and she directed me in my role as Miss Adelaide. And Kathleen was an actress at the barn and also a singer and also a team member. And she kept bugging Mary, you got to go look at this Abby Real girl. She's, you know, you got to. And so Mary came and saw my show. And then that's when I auditioned for the barn. And so I was in my first production my senior year of high school. I got to sit and have dinner every night with the great Chauncey Conklin after the show. And he would pass away that next December on Christmas Eve, leaving behind one of the most fascinating experiments in the performing arts, a dinner theater. And Mary would take up the reins at that point and run the show herself. So in the 2000s, the barn did find its feet again. I think Mary had a different mindset of what she was going to do. She paid less time and attention to the interior and exterior of the building. She developed a small troupe of actors and invested a lot of resources in just keeping that core group around. The bus groups really started picking back up after this time, and she focused on doing smaller scale productions. Chauncey was known for big, he wanted to do Fiddler on the Roof and Guys and Dolls, and, you know, he'd cast like 25, 30 people, you know, and Mary was like, no, 4, you know, we're casting 4 people in this show and you're going to play 2 parts, you know. So Mary started to understand how the system worked if she was going to keep this going. And it paid off. The popular State Farm discount came around during that time. Y'all remember that? I still hear about it. You call and ask. And also Spotlighter cards. She figured out the formula. I'll never forget her when we would work on the business together and she would talk to me about giving me advice and kind of coaching me. She'd say, Abby, you got to shorten your odds. Don't offend anybody. Help them get out of their day. Give them good food. But it's always a gamble. You just never know if it's going to work or not. You never know. Now, in 2015, by 2015, it was kind of business as usual for Mary and the Conklin players. In later conversations, Mary would lament about how right around this time, she would start to realize that she needed to desperately update the facility. She'd laugh and say, I'm air conditioning half of Goodfield because the barn was falling apart. It was hard to keep up with it. She knew she needed to move towards computers and technology. She was getting left behind in that. But again, how do you stop a ship once it's sailing at full speed? I think anybody who's worked in the restaurant industry, number one, knows that. And if you're working in performing arts, that's the same thing. You know what changes you need to make, but how do you afford to take a month, 2 months offline to fix them all and reopen again? It's just not possible. So you take the wind out of its sails by a tornado unexpectedly happening. And on August 16, 2015, the barn was hit by a massive storm. It was a mesocyclone and microburst. It formed directly over the barn. The tornado never actually hit the ground. It just swarmed over the barn, picked it up, twisted it, sat it back down on its foundation. The barn was totally inoperable after that. So Mary packed up the costumes and the props, and she took the show on the road. They performed at 5 Points, Washington, but it just wasn't the same. Same problem Chauncey had. They could only get a week, maybe 2. There was no food. I mean, there was, but it wasn't the same, Everybody missed the barn. The insurance company denied her claim time and time again, saying, the insurance company, it wasn't State Farm. Wasn't you guys. Saying that the barn was falling down on its own. Which, I mean, really, if you look at it, that's what it looked like. I mean, it didn't look great, okay? It didn't look great. But they had proof that the storm had gotten it to the place. I mean, there were cracked. The mantle in the new barn is the primary support beam of the original barn that we pulled out of the wreckage that actually went to the courtroom with Mary Simon to win the case against the insurance company as proof that the storm had damaged it. It had just been painted brown. The crack was wide open and exposed from the storm that day. And they had pictures that it had just been painted. So it was fascinating. So after 2 years of fighting the insurance company, in May of 2017, Mary announced to the public that the Barn 2 dinner theater and the Conklin Players would be no more. They would officially close the doors for the second time in their history. And 2 weeks later, Mary and I met for lunch, and the rest is history. There we are. That is the women that made this project happen. My mom, next to Mary Simon, that's my daughter, Leslie, and then me, and then Marcia Schlitt was our Springfield Growth Corp representative, who was our SBA liaison. She's amazing. She's one of the most wise women in the world of SBA that I know. And then Shelley Hunt, who is now retired, but was a commercial banker at Morton Community Bank. And I will tell you what, you Busey dudes, I tell you what, I met with a lot of banks. Now, I didn't come to Busey. I didn't, so I can take you off the hook. But I met with a lot of bankers. I felt like I was dating bankers. I was going to a dinner meeting every night during that season of life. I met, and the only female banker that I met with was Shelley Hunt in that whole experience. And Shelley had a daughter who was going to be getting married soon, and she'd already married off a son. And she got it. She saw exactly what I wanted to do. She understood my passion, and I think she knew, don't get in the way of a working mama who's got a vision. Like, we can get stuff done. And Shelley made this project happen. I didn't have money. I just had a vision. And Shelley was incredible. I miss her so much. She retired a couple years ago, but then she also supported us, got us through COVID. She was an amazing business mentor for me and really went the extra mile. So In January, so here we are, right? 2024, we've made it. We opened in 2019. In January and February of 2024, the magnitude of our 50th anniversary really started to settle in. And of course it did. Here's why. I had just entered into what researchers at Princeton University call the 9 Inders. According to studies conducted in 2014, humans approaching milestone birthdays engage in a very unique pattern of behavior. Do I have any 9 Inders in the room? Do I have any 69-year-olds? Yes. Do I have any 59-year-olds? 39? Yeah, I know, Naki, it's okay. You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. Okay, all right. Any 79-year-olds? Yes, all right. So pay attention. This is for you, okay? So researchers have found that 9 Inders compared to any other year of your life, including the actual milestone year, like the 50th year or the 70th year, whatever, were more likely to engage in introspection, engage in massive willpower changes, including minimal things like diet and exercise, and major things like career changes, moving, marital status, you name it. And 9 Inders do a great deal of looking back, connecting the dots, analyzing trends, themes about the past decade of life. The 9th year of anything is a very powerful season of change, more so than the milestone year itself. And as a business, this concept fits. As I've ushered my team at the barn into the 49th year, I've been kind of downright obsessed with understanding our past and analyzing our future. I wrote the entire children's show this summer, all about how Barn 1, Barn 2, and Barn 3 came to be. I've been emailing our customers. I've been digging deep into research. I have been obsessed with understanding who we are and where we're going in our 49th year. And so it was this 49th year journey in the past of our business that really landed me smack dab in the middle of this cake. The cake y'all have in your boxes right now. And let me tell you something, these aren't really fancy cakes. It's a good old-fashioned piece of vanilla cake with whipped cream and cherries on top, okay? It is nothing to write home about. Nothing to write home about. But I started doing investigation. I pulled out all my photo albums of my family attending productions over the years since I was 5 years old. The set changed. The actors on stage changed. The seasons changed. But in every picture, there were 3 things in the background of every single customer picture. And they mirrored the pictures of the new barn. Can my barn loyals in the room help me out? What's one thing you'd see at the barn every time you can? Beer cheese. Oh, it's mad at me there. Beer cheese in the cute little monkey dish, right? It's got to be in the monkey dish. If it's not in the monkey dish, something's wrong. Okay? Beer cheese. Now, the wine glass came later after Prohibition was passed and appealed with our new barn being opened. Mary and Chance did try 3 separate times to overturn Prohibition in Goodfield. And they weren't able to get the vote. And so we were really grateful that we were able to do that in 2019 when we opened the new barn. But it took us until 2019 to to overturn, thank you, Prohibition since President Roosevelt. That's when it was made that you had to overturn it to be able to serve alcohol in your community. So anyways, so beer cheese is number 1. Now, the beautiful thing is in 2020, we realized how much people loved the beer cheese, that it was like a really big deal. And the fact that we were closed for a year and then almost 2 years and then really almost 2.5, we had to figure out how to get our beer cheese in the hands of customers. So we finally figured out that we could sell it as a product. And so I tell you what, beer cheese and raspberry dressing kept the barn afloat during 2020. That was literally my only source of income during 2020 was people coming for beer cheese and raspberry dressing. So what else? What else would you see on every table? Oh, fried chicken. You know, I didn't do the fried chicken, even though I should have. I should have done the fried chicken, but I didn't. Red candles. I didn't bring the red candle. Do you remember these little red candles? They used to be real flames, but then people started burning their programs. They would set their programs on top of it and it would catch on fire. And we didn't want that joke to actually become real, you know, so we got rid of, now they're pretend flames in the candles. But these red candles, they're on every table. And I have a story about that later too. And last but not least, our celebration cakes. We do announcements before every show, and we celebrate the people in the room. Whatever your celebration is, you tell the box office when you check in, you send us a little note when you make your reservation. We ask you on the phone when you call and reserve, are you celebrating anything with us that night? You be prepared, because if you are, we're gonna talk about it and we might embarrass you or call you out. So make sure your people are okay with us shouting to the rooftops that they're turning whatever number they're turning or whatever. We've seen some really mean glares from on stage of, you know, smacking your husband for telling the world how old you were or whatever. But we're going to celebrate you, right? 50 years of change, a new building, a new owner, new actors, new shows, but the building blocks of celebration remain. And there's been times this year, as I've dug deep in the 9-ender year of introspection, that I've wondered, how in the world are we still around? As a new business that went almost 2 million in the hole to make it happen in 2019, then lost the ability to operate in 2020 and 2021, and honestly, most of 2022, a business like us, we were impacted well beyond when everything else opened up. Bus groups weren't running. I mean, it impacted us. Our demographic was not comfortable coming out. We were at half houses for most of 2022. I have to wonder. My dad, Les Real, had a favorite saying. And by the way, I think this is fun. I always like to make this connection. My dad used to sell cattle to the original Mr. Rust. And so I grew up knowing Mr. Rust, not as CEO Mr. Rust, but as the guy who would call to ask Dad if he had any new Angus cattle to sell. So anyways, so that's my fun State Farm memory there. But my dad used to always say, Abby, some things just have a will to live. He was usually talking about a farm dog or a weed, but in this case, he's talking about a barn. And here's why. It's not us. It is not the barn. It is you. It's why you come and see us. Sure, we're good for a show and a great meal, but there's something different about what happens when you come there. You come to the barn when you have something to celebrate. And while you're celebrating with us, we surround you with music, laughter, and social connection. 3 of the most potent antidepressants in the medicine cabinet. In my old career, if you would have told me that there is a surefire way to help folks feel happier, less stressed, and more connected, I would have said, point me in the direction. And I had no clue that you would have been pointing me in the direction of a barn in the cornfields of Goodfield, Illinois. So what actually happens when you buy a ticket to the barn? Well, we're really in the business of serving endorphins, like dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and all the lesser known chemicals of joy. These endorphins are directly linked to humans' desire to celebrate, and celebration brings music, laughter, and social connection. Now, this is a special moment. They surprised me on stage for my birthday with my own celebration cake last year. It was a very happy surprise. But when you think about the tradition of singing happy birthday, there is a biological need for that song to be sung. Music triggers the neurotransmitters in our brain associated with dopamine release and other happy endorphins. Listening to music has been shown to have the same effects as medication on the brain when it comes to feeling less stress and less anxiety. Research even shows that human blood cells respond to sound frequency. Guys, music and sounds can heal and harmonize our bodies. Music is one of the most common aspects of a stroke patient's physical therapy because of how much of an impact it has on the brain. And one recent study found 45 minutes of relaxing music before bed compared to an audiobook or silence significantly improves sleep quality and decreased depressive symptoms compared to all other options. Now, the other thing that celebrations do is bring laughter. Now, you're not even going to see the audience in this, but you can listen for them. Celebrations bring laughter, and laughter dumps dopamine into your brain just like music does. It releases similar endorphins into the brain while simultaneously creating social bonds with those around us. So each brain is like a transmitter, and when we start to laugh, it is like dopamine domino effect. When we're in a big group and someone laughs, our brain automatically receives a chemical signal that we should laugh, even if we have absolutely no idea why we're laughing. So if someone else is laughing, you can't help but do it. And it's a wonderful shared collective experience that helps build more social bonds. The other thing about laughter is it cleans up brain plaque, which you may know is associated. As your brain plaque grows, your likelihood of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, which is something that a journey that I am currently working through with my own mother. That laughter has a direct correlation. It cleans up brain plaque, right? So those connections as we are aging adults are ones that start to fade. And so brain plaque gets cleaned up by the laughter and those connections. Sorry, it's okay. It happens all the time. But I'm like, I just want to stop for you, but it's not you. It's all good. I'll keep going. Laughter fosters rigorous brain region connectivity that kicks in when we hear a laugh. And our brains have to work really hard to decipher where the laugh came from and what kind of communication it's providing. So it's an excellent way to help people stay mentally agile. And finally, laughter fosters social connection. In fact, studies on health and wellness show couples who laugh together and integrate laughter into their life routine score significantly higher on global evaluations of relationship quality, closeness, and social support. Women typically rate a sense of humor as a top 3 trait for a potential spouse, right? Ladies, if they don't make us laugh, we're going to be bored, okay? Not a good partner. Men tend, and this is a fascinating finding, men tend to rate women who laugh a lot higher than those who don't, i.e., they laugh at your jokes, in which case you rate them higher than women who don't. But we can help you out with that, gentlemen. Date night at the barn. Somebody else will be laughing and they'll give you credit for it. So come and enjoy. It's good for your brain. Now, the other part is that we are thrilled. You know what? I think I might have. Let me see what comes next. There we go. I skipped my paper here. Last but not least, I'm out of order. Furthermore, a trip to the barn celebrates social connection. The last medication that the barn's been cooking up for 50 years. And I do have a video here. This is actually one of my team members' families. So after the shows, our actors are always hanging out in the lobby and you can take pictures with them. And so this has just become a big tradition at the barn that we all have these lovely fun photos in front of the fireplace. And this video, this is Naki and her whole family trying to line up for their picture together. And if you listen closely, when we take pictures, we say beer cheese. So here's all of us trying. If this isn't social connection, I don't know what is, right? Look at us. Oh, we're getting them all in line. Here we go. That's my little guy. Sophie's in there. There we got everybody. Look at that. Look at that family. Yeah, look at that family. As we age, we shed family and friends. It's a natural part of life, yet somehow we forget that the shrinking of our social connectivity is also one of the primary causes of depression and anxiety in aging adults. Like I said earlier, I'm in the process of emailing some of our longest standing customers, and I've asked them, what kind of an impact has the barn made? What do you remember most about the barn? And just this week, I got a beautiful email back from a woman who's been coming to the barn since the very beginning of it out in Goodfield. Her husband has since passed away. Her husband passed away in between that time that the barn was down and the new barn was built. And she, I'll be honest, was one of my most difficult customers upon reopening the new barn. Nothing I did satisfied her. I gave her so many barn bucks. I tell you what, I don't think she's had to pay for a show yet. But she was very difficult. But she has been transformed by coming back to the space. She was nervous. And she shared all of it with me in email. I had no idea that's what was going on and why maybe she was so difficult with me in the beginning. She was mourning. She was grieving. She'd never been back without her husband. And she sat in the exact same table all by herself. But the beautiful thing at the barn is that you don't have to sit all by yourself. You get to sit with other people that you've never met before. And you have beautiful conversations and you get to know each other. And she has made so many new friends coming and sitting right at table F3 where she always sat with her husband. And now she said in her email, she said, I feel like the barn is my family. The barn staff dote on me every time I'm there. I feel connected to you. I can't wait to come see you again. We have given her social connectivity in a place where she thought she would never be able to feel that joy and that happiness again. You know who I'm talking about, right? Happy people. Oh, another side note too. A lot of people don't realize this, but sorry, my pages are a little bit out of order, so I'm going to go back here for just a moment. When the neurotransmitter of serotonin is also directly linked to our gut health. So a lot of times if you're unhappy, you got tummy problems, right? If you have tummy problems, you're unhappy. It kind of goes hand in hand, right? So a happy tummy is also directly linked to a more positive experience, happier feelings, lack of depressive symptoms. And so having good food, good connection, good laughter, all in one spot makes a big difference and keeps people connected. Last but not least, celebration cultivates loyalty. Now, the barn has been known for years as the place to come for corporate Christmas parties and celebrations. And now that we operate as a cross-purpose event center, we've launched a new initiative in 2025 to open our doors to corporate events and retreats, luncheons, and team building experiences. Businesses can now book the space and organize the retreat themselves, and we'll just feed you and give you all the technology and all the things that you need and take care of all that for you. Or you can actually work with our barn team of professionals to organize a retreat using our short list of talented motivational speakers, magicians, performers, and seasoned team building facilitators, including myself. Again, I got to find my pages here, guys. I'm going to get back to where I need to be. I'm going to get to this page and then I'm going to be ready to go. Boy, I got out of order, didn't I? We're thrilled to be home to Compeer's annual employee appreciation experience. They have come and celebrated with us every year. They do both a huge luncheon for their employees and then they do a huge luncheon for their clients as well with us. Every year we have libraries, dentist office, trucking companies, insurance agencies, all of them celebrating their employees with a night out in the barn. And this year, we signed on more corporate sponsors than ever before because they see the value of getting people off-site for the day or the night to celebrate, reflect, laugh, and connect. Celebrating the personal achievements of others, whether they be birthdays or anniversaries, you name it, it shows loyalty to your employees. And it doesn't take a degree in organizational management to know that employees who feel celebrated are more productive and happier. Think back to your very favorite boss at State Farm. What was different about them? Chances are they celebrated you and they celebrated your team. I have to reflect on my father, Les Real, just a bit when I talk about this concept. I was introduced to the barn when I was 5 years old because of my dad. He loved to celebrate things, little things, crazy things. He sold a cow. We're going to Jim's, right? That's what we did. ISU won their game. Let's go for ice cream at Carl's afterwards. The power went out at the farm. Well, we're packing up and heading to Jumers for the night and we're going to swim. That's what we did. He loved celebrating. He took all of his employees to the old barn every New Year's Eve to celebrate. And before there was a Raiders farm, my dad used to open up our entire property for hay rack rides, bonfires, all sorts of fun experiences. We hosted Illinois State's international students. We hosted the baby fold and all of their adoptive families. We hosted fraternities and sororities, church groups, you name it. My dad loved to celebrate. And I was raised to celebrate people. And you better believe, this is my mom and dad on New Year's Eve at the barn. You better believe the moment I got my first role on stage at the barn, he took every moment he could to bring every single person he knew. I think he kept Mary in business, just like himself, by bringing so many customers and clients and friends and family to the barn. When I graduated from high school, so I did my first show at the barn when I was a senior in high school. And when I graduated, I actually went on and auditioned as a theater major at Illinois Wesleyan University. So I started as a theater major at Wesleyan. But after 2 years, I changed my major. And I did it for many reasons, but the number one reason is that I just didn't quite fit with the theater majors. I wasn't like them. And I'm still not like them. And I think for this new old barn to survive, it was important that the next person in line be someone who could look at it from a different perspective, from all three angles: community, events, and entertainment, right? After all, third time's the charm, right? Having first been a customer, then an employee, and now the owner, I have a different perspective of what makes the barn unique. I'll never forget when I first bought the barn from Mary, I was talking to her about what inventory I needed to buy. And I said, well, hey, I got to get those red candles. And she was like, huh? I'm like, the red candles and the monkey dishes. Where do you have a sample? I want to get the same thing. She was like, kind of surprised and almost offended. She's like, you're not going to get something new and modern and different? I mean, she knew I liked things, the wedding side of the way I run the business is very not like the old barn, very fancy and very pretty and different, you know. But I wanted the things for dinner theater, I wanted to feel the same way. She was confused. She was too close to it or was focused on other things. As a customer, I loved the red candles and the monkey dishes of beer cheese and the celebration cakes and the tradition of announcements. The shows were always wonderful and I loved the food, but it was those overall experiences, those little details that are what made it for me. And now we know why. The word celebration comes from the Latin word celebrare, which means to assemble to honor. And that's exactly what our ancestors did. They assembled and honored the big milestones in life, the harvest, the solstice, and let's not forget the birth of a child. Perhaps the most celebrated of holidays in all the world began in a barn. And today, that's still what happens in this space. As it turns out, celebrations are essential to us as breathing and eating and sleeping. Those feel-good chemicals that promote joy and connectedness, they matter. Celebrations break up the monotony, they create memories, they remind us that life isn't about the daily grind, and finally, they're a mathematical tool for telling us time, marking major events, and tracking significant change in our life. So the next time you see an ad for the barn or you hear about a wedding or our next show, I want you to fast forward through all this history and all the rebuild and all the memories. And I want you to ask yourself a question. When was the last time you celebrated something? When was the last time you celebrated someone? Have you felt celebrated lately? Have you listened to any music? Have you laughed? Have you had any new social connections? Do a little mental health inventory for me when you hear about the barn. And then, like Julia says, find a way to bring cake to your next meeting. Your brain, your body will thank you. I'm so blessed to own and operate a business that's been celebrating people, promoting joy and happiness and social connection for 50 years. Now, with the science of celebration to back me up, you will hear this blessing at the barn before we start any show. May our food bless your bodies. May the fellowship that you enjoyed today with family and friends bless your souls. And may the entertainment you're about to receive bring you joy, peace, and laughter. Here's to another 50 years of celebration. If the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise. Thank you guys so much. Now, you get a cake. And you get a cake. And I think there were, if they wanted time for, I could have bored you all to death and you need to go to the bathroom. So if you need to do that, do it. But if you have questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Does anyone have a
If you
question?
ask a question, I'll give you a cake.
All right.
What's your question, my dear? Did you get a
Hi,
cake
Abby.
already?
No, no.
Oh,
but
you
I
get one
probably don't
now.
need one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I always enjoyed having the server be an actor.
Yes.
And then you go, wow, that was our server. So do you still do that?
Yes, we
Okay.
do. Now it's interesting. So as the barn was aging, that was becoming less and less because as the actors, Mary's kind of core troop that she kind of held on to, you guess what? We get older. And we don't like running around with trays and coffee and da 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 da, right? And so, so the barn is in a rebuilding process because to me, that's a really valuable part of our identity. I love that part of it. And with that comes a need to have younger performers because they're the ones who have the energy and the stamina and the wherewithal to both wait on tables for 2 hours and then turn right around and sing and dance for you and then stay late and clean up their tables and clock out and do all their things, right? And so we're working towards growing and developing some new talent so that we can keep that tradition alive because a lot of the older performers, Dan Chalicombe, he's in it to win it, man. He will never, I think he will never leave the barn. Like, you know, I mean, that's Dan. But yeah, which is amazing. But he's really one of my oldest team members who still is comfortable waiting tables. And after that, we've been growing new talent that are willing to do it. Yeah, no, it's great. And this coming show, I think almost all of our servers, except for a handful, about half and half, will be actors on the floor as well. So yeah. And now don't think that they're just going to be upstairs. We put them everywhere. Back at the old barn, if you wanted to have an actor wait on you, they were only upstairs. They're everywhere now. So just know that. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question on, so one of our first shows, I was high school maybe, was Love Rides the Rails.
Yes.
And it ran for, I don't even remember, a long.
Ever. Longest running show.
time. Would you ever consider bringing that type of a show in a condensed version?
It's coming back this summer.
Okay.
Yes.
'Cause it
Our
was-
2025 season is a blast for the past. We are bringing back to the barn stage our most played titles of the last 50 years, -1. And I only have so many slots to fill, right? But -1 show. No one will touch Smoke on the Mountain out of respect for Mary. Like you just can't, nobody can do that part. We won't even try. Like that was Mary, and that's my all-time favorite show at the barn. But we're bringing back Love Rides the Rails, and we're doing a condensed version of it. We also recorded in 2020, we did a radio version of Love Rides the Rails, and we sequenced it to our light show. And that actually has Mary's voice in it. She played Carlotta, the character that she always played. So that's going to be playing all summer long while we're doing wedding season. And then we're also doing a condensed version during the summer. So we're really excited about that. Yeah, I can't wait. Actors are going to be playing multiple roles in that one. Yeah. He is still alive, but not, I know he's not doing the best, but he's still with us and he's still as ornery as ever. I tell you what, oh, he's a lovely, lovely human being. He was in our very first performance at the New Barn, and that was his last show. And it was kind of a gamble. We were very worried about him in that one, but he's lovely. So yeah. Yeah. What else? Any other questions? Yeah.
I want to see you.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting process. So we just started, and again, this is the old barn was a little bit more, well, Chauncey, you got to kind of take it back. There's different ways that it worked. Chauncey wanted to run the original barn as an acting school. I mean, really, it was a conservatory for acting and performers. He grabbed all these talented college kids and he drug them on over to the barn, and he'd make them take classes during the day in the rehearsal barn, and they'd learn singing and acting and dancing and all sorts of things. And then if they were good enough, they'd make it into a main stage barn show. And then they staffed his waiters. And that's how they made money. He wanted it to be a way for actors to make a valuable living here in Central Illinois. And so Chauncey was open to, he auditioned everybody and had these huge shows. Then when Mary took over, again, kind of brought it a little closer and managed it a little more responsibly, right? So once she kind of found a group that was good, she kind of just stuck with them. So there was then this idea that it was like a big deal. If Mary called you, she had heard about you. But that was the only way you were going to get on that barn stage, is if Mary called you. And so there wasn't open auditions. There wasn't, you had to be asked to come and show if you could make it work or not. And then it was just always a gamble. You never knew who, what she was going to do and who she was going to cast. So I was, lucky I got a call. And oftentimes Mary, and this is also kind of my mentality too, Mary didn't want to cast anybody who wasn't good on the floor with customers. So a lot of times you had to work first and prove that you knew what you were doing and you were good with customers, and then you would be cast in a show. So she kind of used that as well. And now just because we're looking for new talent and we want to make sure that folks know that we're open to it, we've been doing open call auditions where we'll hold an open audition for the entire year. You can come and we give you your requirements. You need to sing this much. You need to dance this much. I teach you a little routine on stage, and then you do a monologue and we record it, and then we'll call you back if we think you have a good fit in one of the shows that's coming up. So we get a little bit of both, but I think we also have been really blessed. I've been adding some folks to direct with me. I'm a busy person and a busy mom and all the things. And so I'm directing the shows now too. So I brought some folks on who are much wiser and talented than me, who went to school for all of this. And they have been co-directing with me, and they're very involved in other community theaters. So a lot of times they'll be like, hey, I saw this person in the show, and come check them out. So that's been another way that we've been doing it.
Not a question, but just a comment that, COVID was hard on businesses. Inflation was hard on businesses. And it's a testament to your passion and your valuing of customers and employees, I think, is showing through.
Well, thank you, because it was the doozy, let me tell you, and it still is. I'll be real. We did not, I think a lot of the restaurant industry, and I'll just speak to the restaurant industry, that's not even the theater part, but the restaurant industry did not anticipate how much, at least I didn't, and our team didn't, how much prices would go up and how high they would stay and for how long. And we are in the business of setting a menu in place a year to 2 years, especially for our weddings. I can't book a wedding now and then charge you 2 times what I told you 2 years from now. People book weddings a year and a half, 2 years in advance. So we have really been struggling to make up that difference because the cost of product for us has just skyrocketed, and yet we're charging the same price. I went to Taco Bell the other day and I was like, you can get prime rib at the barn for what I just drove out of Taco Bell for. What is wrong with us, right? But it's been hard for me. I think and they know me, I'd give it away if I could. So that's a problem I have as well. Like I want to keep us competitive. I don't want to outprice anybody. I want everybody to be able to come to the barn, but that's been a hard change for us to try to adapt. And the cost of royalties, that's how they stuck it to us too. Because all these royalty companies weren't making any money during the course of COVID, my royalty prices went up. I mean, for a show that would normally cost me, because you have to pay that up front to even be able to advertise you're going to do that show. And to even do an old show, even like Love Rides the Rails. Who's doing Love Rides the Rails right now? Nobody but the barn. The price of that royalty went up by like 50% after I had looked at it previously to after COVID, just because they needed to make back all the money that they lost during that experience as well. So it's been but you know what? What a great lesson in the second year of business, right? Like, I'm kind of at that point now where I'm like, throw it at me. What else you got? I shouldn't say that because I'll speak it into existence. But it does make you appreciate how much that experience at that point in my, if you would have asked me in 2019 what was around the corner as a new business owner, that would have been the last thing I expected. But I'm so glad it happened as soon as it did, because it taught me a whole new level of resilience. It taught me a whole new level of respect for my team and loyal employees. It taught me a whole new level of work ethic. I mean, I'm a hardworking farm girl, but boy, the mental fatigue of COVID on small business owners was crazy. I had decision fatigue every day. It was 5 different decisions I had to make. And then the next day it all changed, and then the next day it would all change. So yeah. So thank you. I appreciate the compliment, but that's all of us. We're in it together,
One
Yeah.
more question.
Oh, one more.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, uh-oh. Oh, I'm sorry. I know that rule and I just failed. I'm sorry. I'll do it from now on.
Right, Abby, we
Yes.
just, your barn theater too is such a great escape, and we can always count on a good time, good service, and a lot of laughs. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Good.
the escape from politics and all the stuff in
Amen.
your life.
So we
was
don't do
awesome.
politics, politics, religion. Sorry, she just said it's an escape from the world. And at the barn, we don't do politics, religion, or sports. Why? Because why? I don't understand, except it divides people. It doesn't bring us together. It divides people. And that is just ridiculous. That's not what we're meant to do in that barn, and I won't have it. So when my actors come on board and my staff come on board, I tell them they can wear any crazy tie they want, but it can't have sports teams on it, and it can't have politics on it, and it can't be religious, except for Christmas, because we all love Christmas. That's the only thing. But so anyway, yeah, I feel really strongly about that. We are open. We love everyone and everybody at the barn, and everybody is welcome, because everybody deserves a chance to laugh and connect and feel closer to one another. And that is a sacred space where you can do it, and there aren't a lot of spaces, it feels like right now, where you can do that. So, yeah.
Thank you very
Sorry.
much.
Oh, that was the last one, but I'll talk to you on your own.
Thank you, Abby. Appreciate it.
They're too young to be, but I'm putting them to work all the time. Real quick, let me introduce my team who's here, just for the people who are out there. Naki Schrock, my bar manager is in the back, Naki. Tracy Simmons, our technical director, she builds all our sets, does all the fun stuff. Gina Cooper, our dining manager, also an actress at the barn. She'll be in the barn show starting in Christmas time. She'll be on the barn stage. Sarah Thomas, my operations manager, and nobody knows this yet because it's not public knowledge, but also my brand new co-owner. We're announcing that in 2025. Anyways, Emily is brand new at the barn. She's joining us. She's so exciting. I don't know what to call you yet because she just started. And I've been so blessed at Kathleen Irving, huge friend, big mentor of mine, also started helping out with weddings this summer. She's full-time employed at Harlan. She's got bigger and better things to do, but has been blessing me with her presence at the barn. It's so great to have her back because she's an original, one of the founding members of the original barn. Her and her husband were in all the shows. And I wouldn't be where I was today without this woman. So I'm so happy to have her with me too.
Oh, we're happy to have
So,
all
yeah.
of you.
And I'm going to take my microphone off, but I will totally talk to all of you if you have any questions. And there's 6 more cakes.
Okay, so the ship counselors are at the back of the room if you want to talk to them. I am going to ask the Goldtimers committee to just kind of stand up real quick and ask the rest of you to look around. If you have any feedback about the ISU Alumni Center, they'd love to hear it. Okay, thank you. A couple of announcements. Next Wednesday, beginning at 3:00 at Little Beaver Brewery, we're going to have a social. We decided that we had a great turnout last time and we wanted to do it again. So tell your friends and come on out and see us. Then the State Farm Heritage Team has decided to offer 2 retirees tours of the museum that is located at Corporate. And there are 4 tours being offered in October. You can go out to the Goldtimers website and sign up for that. So many of us remember going to dinners at the park. That is being offered again by the Bloomington Link Center. There's one on October 8th. Nelson's is going to cater it. You've got choices of grilled chicken, meatless lasagna, or a kid's meal. You need to go online to sign up for that and pay ahead of time. Our website is over there for those who may not have it, but it's goldtimers.org. You do need a park card for that, and you can find out where to sign up for that on our website as well. Then the last thing I want to tell you about is our next meeting. It's going to be on November 21st here at 10 a.m. We're going to have an economic and market update. Derek Sassfeld, hopefully I said his name correctly, is a Senior Vice President, Director of Investment Research and Strategy at Busey, and he will be our presenter. So we hope you'll all come out for that. Thank you very much.